Life is unpredictable. That
To order for Monday, September 27th, 2021. First item I have on the agenda tonight are resolutions 115, 116, and 117. Those are the annual resolutions from the law director who negotiates and enters into contracts with the city of Reynoldsburg, city of Pickerington, and the Fairfield County Commissioners for prosecution services. I will now to defer to law director Ullom to impart some more wisdom on that.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Stoughton. No, I think the only thing I'd add for those that are familiar, statutorily, my office prosecutes all of the city of Lancaster and the unincorporated areas misdemeanors. This is adult misdemeanors. We, Reynoldsburg, the small piece that's there, we contract with them and have for years, and Pickerington as well, to do their adult misdemeanor prosecutions. We negotiate our contract with the county. It used to be we individually did it with each of the villages, the incorporated areas in the county. Years ago, I don't know who had it, but it was a wise decision to just let the county commissioners negotiate that on behalf of the incorporated villages and stuff within the county. So that would then encompass what we do, which is prosecute all adult misdemeanors throughout Fairfield County.
So we get a little something for the effort.
Yes.
So any questions on that? Again, we do this annually. 2 readings for all 3 pieces. The odd numbers will have Melody as the second. Christina will be the second on 116. So 2 readings on 115, 116, and 117. Moving on to Resolution 11821. That's a resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids for the Lawrence Street Central Fuel Depot relocation project. This is coming through Public Works. Mr. Schoonover.
Well, it's pretty self-explanatory on here, I guess. So where the fuel depot is and where public transit parks their buses, it is known to flood with severe rain. So the idea is they've been charging a surcharge for anyone that uses the depot, I think, for the last couple of years to build up that fund. So idea would be move it over by the salt barn. Yes, Paul?
Yes. We actually do a little bit for years because we have some Meals on Wheels. We have city schools that uses that parking lot. So it'll move it completely out of the flood area at all. And which, as you know, we've been bringing this before council on other times. So we're trying to see what price we'll land at and see if it's possible to do.
So what do you expect it to be? I understand that some of the fuel surcharge money will pay for it, but then it's like we're going to go to the state infrastructure bank. What are we expecting the leftover to be?
I can't give you a price. It would be utter ballpark here.
Yeah, just I'm not looking for precision. Just a guess.
We definitely don't have enough money to cover that price. It's, I really should have asked about that.
Okay.
I think it's in the neighborhood of $600,000 total, less whatever money is in the fund now. So we probably borrow several hundred or $400,000 from the state infrastructure plan.
So would we be able to service that debt with the fuel surcharge money?
That's exactly what we're thinking.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So in addition, so the EPA is then requiring us to put the cover over that, like the gas stations have for a number of years. And we've been able to not do that so far, but if we're going to do it, we might as well do it in a new location instead of in the floodplain. If you've ever seen the city cameras when it rains heavy, you could do your boat in there with the sneaking out. You just drive your boat right over the pump.
So that brings me. We hold on. I think we have like $33 grand that in this like Buster account for that. Is it for the fuel depot?
No, it's for depot. well, storage tank, it's supposedly like an insurance policy to replace it.
Okay.
For the actual underground tanks.
Does that get reduced or minimized because we're no longer in a floodplain?
I don't know the answer to that.
Oh, I don't know about that. I doubt it. That's
Yeah.
really kind of a low amount. These tanks will actually be above ground. That's why we're trying to think about it now, because they could be 6 months to a year to get delivery on these tanks.
No,
They're
I'm just
specialized
asking.
tanks.
I would say there's probably no well,
I would assume that money is to be in the fund. The EPA in Ohio has a fund that covers spills and such for underground tanks, and it costs each tank, you've got like $11,000 buy-in. And
Right,
that's probably what
that's-
that money
we've got
is
three
the
tanks.
buy-in if we have a leak or a spill that goes into them tanks.
yeah.
Nothing to do with floodplain, just to do with the tanks.
I was just merely asking. Sorry.
Oh, that's a good question.
You know, it's on our, I think it's even on our fund report that
Right,
it's
yes.
called the Buster thing. And we did that years and years ago.
Oh, a long time
Been
ago,
a long
yes,
time.
for the three tanks.
Okay. So what's your pleasure, Mr. Schoonover?
We're gonna go 3 readings.
Okay. Mr. James is your second? Yes, sir. All right. Any further questions on this? Very good. We'll do 3 readings on 11821. Next item I have is 11921. That's a resolution to decrease appropriations in the wastewater utility reserve fund 6029. This is coming through water pollution. Mr. James.
I would like to yield some time to Superintendent Nixon to give us a little more detail on this.
Mr. Chairman, members of Finance, Denise Cruz put out an email Friday that pretty well explains this. We set aside the money typically from our annual 6004 to the 6029 transfer. And generally, with the smaller projects, we just transfer the money within. And the auditors requested this time, since it's $3 million, that we do this transfer through City Council. The project was bid back at the end of July. Rock River was the low bidder at just shy of $2.95 million. So this 3 will hopefully cover anything we have with any contingencies or change orders. If we could, we'd like to have a first reading passage tonight. As the weather is good and we're starting to see materials get delivered, the contractor would like to start getting to work as soon as possible.
Questions for Mr. Nixon? Seeing none, Mr. James?
Mr. Hall will be my second, and we will indeed request a single reading for this.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. So we will ask for suspension on 119. All right. Are there any departmental updates this evening?
So I have one. We will bring a resolution in next week. I have just authorized a promotion effective today for the operations manager at Transit. So we're about 8,000 plus in that management line item. So we're going to transfer some funds from our staff salaries over to that. So I'll be requesting just to let you know about that next week so we can balance the budget for the end of the year.
Perfect. Appreciate that. Any other departmental updates? There's so few choices out there. That's good. Let me defer to President Ullom for tonight's meeting prep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have a couple, one other resolution, one other ordinance to address tonight. Temporary Resolution 11421 is our annual resolution to schedule City Council and Finance Committee meetings for 2022. This coming through the Law Committee. Mr. Hall.
Yeah, it's just kind of a standard process that we go through every year. We're not going to ask for suspension. It's going to go for 3 readings.
Very good. 3 readings, and your second is Ms. Teener.
And that is correct.
Okay, 3 readings then on Temporary Resolution 114-21, Temporary Ordinance 34-21, an ordinance to amend the Chapter 115703, Proceedings of the Board for Code Enforcement and Zoning. This coming through Code Enforcement and Zoning. Mr. Martin.
I have no idea. I'm knock out an email. I just saw it today on the agenda.
I know this is something that's been worked on for a little while now out of the law director's office, and it has to do with the ability of code enforcement to go into private proceedings.
Yeah, reading through it, it appears as though they've just changed one word from meetings, from deliberation of meetings, which would mean they probably can have executive session.
They can, that's
They're not
right.
public, so.
Yeah, Mr. Ullom?
Yes.
Ullom understands it.
Yes, so that's what it is. We've, basically, the Board of Zoning Appeals is a considered a quasi-judicial board, hearing, hearing appeal cases, from our zoning code. So, removal of this word basically will allow them then to basically function in their capacity as quasi-judicial, to go into deliberations. The meeting, of course, would still be in public, and the voting on whatever's before them would be in public, but they'd be allowed to deliberate. This is something that actually we needed to clean up for a while now. It kind of came to a head as far back as when the Pearl House was going on, and we had a horde of attorneys, too many. I didn't even like the room. In that case, and it was really tough because one of the main things is that the Board of Zoning Appeals, the members, sometimes need to ask counsel, legal questions in their process or whatever, and to do that out in the open floor the way this is, it just makes it very difficult to do. And when those attorneys were here, a lot of them were like, you guys are like the only ones we've ever seen that had something like this, in your code still. So we just wanted to clean that up. Planning Commission has the ability to go into executive session. This group has the ability to go into executive session, to discuss things outside of the public and still be transparent. So, this is kind of the same thing to give the Board of Zoning Appeals that opportunity really to deal with the cases that come before them.
Well, and just to clarify, and I think you said it right there, but even if the Board of Zoning Appeals decides to go into executive session to deliberate, all of their action still has to be in public. So they got to come back out of executive session in order to take action on any case that would be before them.
Just like a judge would leave the bench to go back and deliberate and come back out and give, their findings. So.
Great, thank you. Any further questions or comments on this? I just want to mention once again that we now have another piece of legislation that's come through that the chair of the committee didn't know anything about. And so whatever it is we can do to address that in the future, I think would be, I don't know who all was.
Yeah, I apologize to Mr. Matlin. I didn't work on this one. I know it went through the whole planning commission process, all that stuff. I apologize that I had assumed that it had been discussed or whatever in your meetings, subcommittee meetings, but I apologize for that, and definitely I'll take that back to the office and make them aware.
I actually had internet trouble today, and I didn't get, and I still, until I just sat down here, I didn't have, so I thought maybe somebody sent me an email, but I just checked my emails. And
Okay.
emails either, so.
Well, I will address
Sorry about that. I mean,
Yeah.
Jan out here is part of our planning commission. The mayor and I sit on it. Recently, we had a meeting about that to approve this to go forward for the BZA. So they goes through a lot of people, and sorry about that. Well spoken.
Okay.
I'm impressed you knew what you knew about it.
Second that?
Well, and I'm a little concerned I knew what I knew about it when the chairman doesn't know anything about it. So, I mean, if we're bringing legislation through, I think we got to make sure the chair of the committee
Well,
knows.
I try to make those meetings, the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Planning Commission.
Oh,
but
the actual BZA meetings?
the
Yeah.
actual
Yeah, and I don't think
meetings,
anyone
but
will have an issue with
I
this.
missed the
It's
last one
just-
because it was about like a garage, I think somebody was building, and I just didn't make it to that meeting.
Again, my apologies. We'll make sure we try to eliminate that.
Thank you very much. All right, anything else on this then? Mr. Mallon, what's your pleasure?
It looks like 3 readings, and Mr. Schoonover says the second one.
Very good. 3 readings with Mr. Schoonover as the second.
I believe we're also going to need to have a public hearing on this as well. We don't?
The assistant law director reviewed that and stated that we did not have to have one
Oh.
because it was just changing the wording and not the mapping. That is what she stated to me.
Okay, well, then
I'm
we'll go
sorry,
with
I
what
don't
she
mean
said.
to-
We'll go with that. I like it.
There you go. If she researched it,
I like it.
She's making decisions.
there you go.
Okay, that is all that I have, and so I will turn it back to the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Are there any other items for finance? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn. Second.
And we are adjourned. It is 6:14.
The regular meeting of Lancaster City Council will begin promptly at 6:30.
Life is unpredictable. That's why estate planning is important. Estate planning provides you comfort and peace of mind knowing that you're taking care of your loved ones and ensuring your legacy lives on just as you envisioned. You lived a life that is beautifully and uniquely yours. You deserve an estate planning attorney who understands that and creates a plan as unique as you and in the best interest of your loved ones. You deserve the local, trusted, experienced attorneys at Dagger Law.
There is no place like Lancaster, Ohio and Fairfield County, and like you, I am proud to call them home. As a longtime resident of Lancaster and graduate of Lancaster High School, this community is important to me, and I want to provide superior customer service, professionalism, integrity, and honesty at the Connor Insurance Agency. I am committed to supporting local programs and projects through my volunteer work and board membership with several organizations. It has been a great honor to work with all the first responders throughout Lancaster, Fairfield County, and the state of Ohio to put on Kids and Cops Day, to be a part of Shop with a Cop alongside the Lancaster Police Department and JFS, and to help Lancaster Public Education Foundation raise funds to support our local public schools and teachers. These men and women work hard to protect and support our community, and I would like to take this moment to say thank you for all they do. My goal as a business owner and insurance agent is to provide my clients with the most appropriate services and coverage for their needs at a competitive rate. As an independent agent, I have several carriers to choose from so I can customize your insurance coverage to fit your needs and desires. I strive to make sure there are no gaps in your coverage that could be harmful, and just as important, that you are not overinsured. I look forward to serving your insurance needs now and in the future. At Connor Insurance, we are here to serve you by protecting what is important to you. Please contact my office at 740-654-2848 for a full list of services and carriers, or visit my website, ConnorInsuranceAgency.com.
The Frankie Smith Funeral Home and Crematory in Lancaster and the Johnson Smith Funeral Home in Baltimore have a long and wonderful history of serving our community. Feel free to give us a call at 740-653-0652. Stop in and see us at either of our two locations, 405 North Columbus Street in Lancaster and 207 South Main Street in Baltimore. Respect for tradition, regard for change.
Good evening. Welcome to Lancaster City Council. Please join me in a word of prayer. Father, we thank you for this day and your blessings. We thank you for your continued guidance and direction in our life. Thank you for sustaining us and bringing us to this place tonight. I pray that all that would happen here will be glorifying unto you. Help us to rightly go about the work that is put before us, representing the citizens of Lancaster who put us in these positions. We'll give you glory, honor, and praise. In Jesus' name, amen. I hereby call this meeting of Lancaster City Council to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt.
Here.
Mrs. Kreitz.
Here.
Mr. Hall.
Here.
Mr. James.
Here.
Mr. Matlin.
Here.
Mr. McDaniel.
Here.
Mr. Schoonover.
Here.
Mr. Stoughton.
Here.
And Mrs. Teener.
Here.
Let the record reflect that all 9 members of Lancaster City Council are in attendance this evening, reading and disposing of the journal.
I'd like to present the regular meeting minutes dated September 13th, 2021.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the journal.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the journal. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Reports of city officials.
There are 2. Email dated September 15th, 2021 regarding the economic development agenda submitted by Mr. McDaniel. And finally, an email dated September 27th, 2021 regarding finance agenda submitted by Mr. Stoughton.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of city officials.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file reports of city officials. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there any communications?
There are 2. Notice to the legislative authority of a change of stock of a liquor license. Smoke Food Factory LLC located at 1217 South Broad Street, Lancaster, Ohio, submitted by the Ohio Division of Liquor Control. And the notice to the legislative authority of a new liquor license to Pap Oil Company LLC located at 600 Lincoln Avenue, Lancaster, Ohio, submitted by the Ohio Division of Liquor Control.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file communications.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file communications. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there any special presentations or awards this evening?
There are none to be
Are
presented.
there any petitions or memorials?
There are none to be presented.
During this time, Lancaster City Council sets time aside to allow the voters and taxpayers of the city to address us on any item or issue they would like. We have a record-breaking attendance tonight, and so, all 2. So I ask if either of you would like to address City Council on any item? No? Okay, very good. We will move ahead then, and thank you for being here this evening. Reports of standing committees.
There are 3. Finance Committee meeting dated September 27th, 2021, submitted by Mr. Stoughton. Code Enforcement meeting dated September 13th, 2021, submitted by Mr. Matlin. And finally, the Water Pollution Control Committee meeting discussion notes because of no quorum dated September 8th, 2021, submitted by Mr. James.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of standing committees.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file reports of standing committees. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries, and I'll just mention, I don't know if we have any outstanding minutes from any meetings, but we're 5 meetings left before the end of the year, so if you do have any, please get them into the clerk as quickly as possible. Reports of special committees.
There are none to be presented.
We have no public hearings this evening, so we'll move to the reading of resolutions, beginning with the 3rd reading of temporary resolution 104-21.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission State Capital Improvements Program and to execute contracts as required. Offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mrs. Teener.
Mr. James.
Just as a quick reminder, this gives us the opportunity to go after some financial assistance for some of these water lines that we're going to be putting out, near the 33 bypass. So at this time, Mr. President, I would like to make a motion that council pass and goes and then upon our written record, temporary resolution numbered 104-21.
Second.
A motion and a second to pass and gross and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 104-21. Further discussion, Mr. James?
No thanks.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt.
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Mr. James.
Yes.
Mr. Matlin.
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover.
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton.
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary resolution 104-21 passes 9-0. Temporary resolution 105-21.
A resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Fairfield County Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levy and certifying them to the county auditor, offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mrs. Bobbitt.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion the council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record Resolution Temporary 10521, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 105-21. Discussion, Mr. Stoughton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. We are required to provide to the county auditor the general property taxes that have been approved as a part of our budget for 2022. So that's what this resolution is doing.
Thank you very much. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt.
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Mr. James.
Yes.
Mr. Matlin.
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover.
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton.
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary resolution 105-21 passes 9-0. We now have second reading on temporary resolution 110-21.
A resolution accepting the applications of financial institutions and designating depositories of public funds, offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. This will be the second of 3 readings, please.
Second of 3 readings on temporary resolution 110-21, temporary resolution 112-21.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission State Capital Improvement and/or Local Transportation Improvement Program and to execute contracts as required, offered by Mr. Schoonover and seconded by Mr. James.
Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the third reading of temporary resolution 112-21.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the third reading of temporary resolution 112-21. Discussion, Mr. Schoonover.
Real quick, we're asking for suspension on this piece to meet submission deadline for the engineering department to submit some paperwork, hopefully get some free money from the state to work on South High Street improvements.
Very good. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Sorry, for the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt.
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Mr. James.
Yes.
Mr. Matlin.
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover.
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton.
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 9-0. Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 112-21.
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 112-21. Further discussion, Mr. Schoonover.
No, thank you.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt.
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Mr. James.
Yes.
Mr. Matlin.
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover.
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton.
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary resolution 112-21 passes 9-0. We now have first reading on a series of resolutions, beginning with temporary resolution 114-21.
A resolution scheduling Lancaster City Council meetings for 2022, offered by Mr. Hall and seconded by Mrs. Teener.
Mr. Hall.
Yes. 103, please.
First of 3 readings on temporary resolution 114-21, temporary resolution 115-21.
A resolution authorizing the law director to negotiate and enter into a contract with the city of Pickerington for prosecution of cases arising from criminal and other offenses that occur in the city of Pickerington within Fairfield County, Ohio, and to accept payment, offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mrs. Bobbitt.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the first of 2 readings, please.
First of 2 readings on temporary resolution 115-21, temporary resolution 116-21.
A resolution authorizing the law director to negotiate and enter into a contract with the city of Reynoldsburg for prosecution of cases arising from criminal and other offenses that occur in the city of Reynoldsburg within Fairfield County, Ohio, and to accept payment, offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of 2 readings, please.
First of 2 readings on temporary resolution 116-21, temporary resolution 117-21.
A resolution authorizing the law director to negotiate and enter into a contract with the Fairfield County Commissioners for prosecution of cases arising from criminal and other offenses that occur in the unincorporated areas and villages within Fairfield County, Ohio, and to accept payment, offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mrs. Bobbitt.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the first of 2 readings.
First of 2 readings on temporary resolution 117-21, temporary resolution 118-21.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids for the Lawrence Street Central Fuel Depot relocation, offered by Mr. Schoonover and seconded by Mr. James.
Mr. Schoonover.
First of 3 readings, please.
First of 3 readings on temporary resolution 118-21, temporary resolution 119-21.
A resolution to decrease and increase appropriations in the wastewater utility reserve fund 6029, offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mr. Hall.
Mr. James.
Mr. President, thank you. I would like to, at this time, make a motion the council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution numbered 119-21.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 119-21. Mr. James.
As we discussed in the Finance Committee meeting, we have actually a contractor that's ready to do some of this work for the lateral B sewer, sanitary sewer, and we are fast running out of good weather to do that, so that's why we're asking for suspension.
Thank you very much. Further discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz? Yes. Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 9-0. Mr. James.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now I would like to make a motion the council pass and gross and inform our written record temporary resolution numbered 119-21.
Second.
Motion and a second to pass and gross and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 119-21. Discussion, Mr. James.
Nothing further, thank you.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz? Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary resolution 119-21 passes 9-0. Are there any further resolutions to come before Lancaster City Council this evening? If not, we'll move to the reading of ordinances, beginning with the third reading of temporary ordinance 26-21.
An ordinance to authorize the mayor to enter into an agreement to accept approximately 0.076 acres, more or less, of real property identified as parcel number 0532027400 from Fairfield County Land Reutilization Corporation, offered by Mr. Schoonover and seconded by Mr. Stoughton.
Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass and gross and enter upon written record temporary ordinance 2621.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass and gross and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 26-21. Discussion, Mr. Schoonover.
Just a real quick reminder, this is just us accepting the southeast corner of Fair and Memorial Drive. There was a house that sat there for a while.
Sixth and Memorial.
I said that last time
Six.
too, didn't I?
Six.
Man,
Gas
I'm like
station
going
we're
real. We need to take that corner too, just so we're clear. So when we do our 6th Avenue road work, the idea is the engineer's office plans to kind of widen that intersection and make it easier to turn for larger trucks. That's all I got.
Very good. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz? Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 26-21 passes 9-0. Temporary ordinance 27-21.
An ordinance to accept a petition for the annexation of 25.8723 plus minus acres in Hocking Township and to declare an emergency, offered by Mr. McDaniel and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to council place on the table ordinance temporary number 27-21.
We have a motion and a second to place on the table temporary ordinance 27-21. A motion to table cannot be debated. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz? Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 27-21 has been laid on the table. Temporary ordinance 29-21.
An ordinance amending the zoning map subject to passage of the annexation of 25.8723 plus minus acres in Hocking Township and to declare an emergency. Excuse me.
Question.
Offered by Mr. McDaniel, seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to council place on the table ordinance temporary number 29-21.
We have a motion and a second to place upon the table temporary ordinance 29-21. Again, this is a non-debatable motion. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 29-21 has been laid upon the table. Temporary ordinance 31-21.
An ordinance to accept the easements necessary to construct, install, repair, maintain, rebuild, replace, relocate, operate, inspect, and/or remove city sanitary sewer and declare declare an emergency. Offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mr. Hall.
Mr. James?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion at this time that council pass and gross and enter upon our written record temporary ordinance number 31-21.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass and gross and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 31-21. Discussion, Mr. James?
Briefly, if you went back and looked at all the different easements out near Campground Road, we need to do this in order to make sure we're not crossing onto properties that have improper easements or no easements at all. So that's why we're asking for this passage tonight.
Very good. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz? Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 31-21 passes 9-0. Temporary ordinance 32-21.
An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of notes in the maximum principal amount of $900,000 in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying the cost of the renovation of an existing building for the use by the city's municipal court, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency. Offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. Stoughton?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion the council pass and gross and enter upon the written record ordinance temporary 3221, please.
We have a motion and a second to pass and gross and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 32-21. Discussion, Mr. Stoughton?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The cost overrun for the renovation of the Columbian building for the municipal court was $1,800,000. This note is being, that money has been paid through this note. We're at the halfway point. We or the courts have paid $900,000. $900,000 remains, and this is basically creating the note for the next installment, if you will.
Very good. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 32-21 passes 9-0. We now have first reading on temporary ordinance 34-21.
An ordinance to repeal and replace Lancaster Codified Ordinance, Part 11, Planning and Zoning Code, Title 3, Zoning and Property Restrictions, Chapter 1157, Board of Zoning Appeals, Section 1157.03, Proceedings of the Board of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Lancaster. I apologize. Offered by Mr. Matlin, seconded by Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. Matlin?
First of three readings.
First of three readings on temporary ordinance 34-21. Are there any additional ordinances to come before Lancaster City Council this evening? If not, is there any action on tabled legislation? If not, is there unfinished business this evening? Is there yes, unfinished business, Mr. Stoughton?
I was anticipating new business.
Oh, you were jumping on it, huh? Okay, new business, Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
The Finance Committee will be calling a special Finance Committee meeting on Friday morning, this coming Friday at 8:15 a.m. in the 1897 conference room in the City Hall building. It will follow the Service Committee meeting. I'm going to defer to the mayor to kind of give kind of the update on the meeting, but for the most part, well, go ahead and you set it up, then I'll.
Yeah, so council approved some time ago funds to hire Clemens Nelson, which is a compensation consulting firm, to look at the structure of city compensation. They have their study completed, and they're prepared to make a presentation to Finance Committee on Friday morning with the results and recommendations.
So we anticipate that meeting to be open, then into executive session, and then closed, because it's compensation specific to current employees. But that, all of council is certainly invited at 8:15 on Friday.
Very good. Special council meeting, 8:15 on Friday.
Finance.
Sorry. Special Finance Committee, 8:15 Friday morning. Okay. Other new business this evening? Yes, Mr. Schoonover.
I'd like to make a motion that the clerk move forward with the destruction of 2014-2015 documents pre-approved by the City Records Retention Commission for the October 2021 meeting on file with the clerk.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to do what Mr. Schoonover just said. Is there discussion? roll call vote?
No.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The clerk will destroy the records. We do have like big old bonfire or something. Yeah. Any other new business? Yes, Miss Bobbitt.
Real quick, for those of you that were maybe out last night for the 250 plate dinner, it was absolutely wonderful. This was with Fairfield Foundation and Destination Downtown. Raised many monies for food pantries here in town, and it was just a wonderful evening. And if you walked away with your belly not full, shame on you. Right, Tom?
I agree.
Very good.
But thanks to all the volunteers and all those folks who donated to that. I mean, it's wonderful.
Yeah, I saw pictures. It looked like quite a labor-intensive evening, I'm sure, for those volunteers and people who put it on. And a very fun night for the attendees. So, very good. Thank you. Further new business. I'll just mention very quickly then that you received an email today from Linda, who was asking for nominations for the Caring Citizen Award, and those nominations are due on the 15th, and then she will be here with us on City Council on October 25th to present those awards. So if you have nominations for those awards, I would encourage you to get those in to Linda as soon as possible. Further new business this evening? If not, we'll ask the clerk to read our announcement of scheduled meetings.
Next meeting, October the 11th. The meeting following, October 25th. Both meetings here in City Council at 6:30 p.m. Upcoming special meetings. Finance Committee will hold a special meeting on October 1st, 2021 at 8:15 in the 1897 conference room. Upcoming committee meetings that are scheduled. Service, October 1st, 7:30 a.m., City Hall, 1897 conference room. Public Works, October 8th, 7:30 a.m. at the City Hall, 1897 conference room. Finance, October the 11th at 6 p.m. in Council Chambers. Water Pollution Control, October 13th at 8 a.m., City Hall, 1897 conference room. And finally, the Finance on October 25th at 6 p.m. in Council Chambers here.
Very good, thank you. Are there any bills this evening?
One bill, PNC, for publication of legislation in MNCO for $82.80.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to pay the bill.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to pay the bill. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Is there a need for an executive session this evening? If not, a motion to adjourn is in order.
Mr. President, I'd like to make that motion that we adjourn.
Second.
The motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Please remember to sign your legislation. Have a great week. Paul.
Life is unpredictable. That's why estate planning is important. Estate planning provides you comfort and peace of mind knowing that you're taking care of your loved ones and ensuring your legacy lives on just as you envisioned. You lived a life that is beautifully and uniquely yours. You deserve an estate planning attorney who understands that and creates a plan as unique as you and in the best interest of your loved ones. You deserve the local, trusted, experienced attorneys at Dagger Law.
There is no place like Lancaster, Ohio and Fairfield County, and like you, I am proud to call them home. As a longtime resident of Lancaster and graduate of Lancaster High School, this community is important to me, and I want to provide superior customer service, professionalism, integrity, and honesty at the Connor Insurance Agency. I am committed to supporting local programs and projects through my volunteer work and board membership with several organizations. It has been a great honor to work with all the first responders throughout Lancaster, Fairfield County, and the state of Ohio to put on Kids and Cops Day, to be a part of Shop with a Cop alongside the Lancaster Police Department and JFS, and to help Lancaster Public Education Foundation raise funds to support our local public schools and teachers. These men and women work hard to protect and support our community, and I would like to take this moment to say thank you for all they do. My goal as a business owner and insurance agent is to provide my clients with the most appropriate services and coverage for their needs at a competitive rate. As an independent agent, I have several carriers to choose from so I can customize your insurance coverage to fit your needs and desires. I strive to make sure there are no gaps in your coverage that could be harmful, and just as important, that you are not overinsured. I look forward to serving your insurance needs now and in the future. At Connor Insurance, we are here to serve you by protecting what is important to you. Please contact my office at 740-654-2848 for a full list of services and carriers, or visit my website, ConnorInsuranceAgency.com.
The Frankie Smith Funeral Home and Crematory in Lancaster and the Johnson Smith Funeral Home in Baltimore have a long and wonderful history of serving our community. Feel free to give us a call at 740-653-0652. Stop in and see us at either of our two locations, 405 North Columbus Street in Lancaster and 207 South Main Street in Baltimore. Respect for tradition, regard for change.